and welcome to CX Today. I'm Rhys Fisher, and today I'm going to be speaking with Derek Corcoran, the CEO and founder of Scorebuddy. Derek, thanks for joining me. How are you doing?
Thanks, Rhys. Good to talk to you again. Hello, everybody. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's been a little while since we kind of first checked in towards the start of the year, hasn't it? But
Correct.
yeah, looking forward to the chat. And today we're going to be talking about, QA and QA data and kind of the insights that companies like Scorebuddy are able to pull through at the minute. But I
Mhm.
suppose more specifically, we're going to try and unpack, I guess, what organizations can actually do with those insights and that data and how that is affecting things like business impact and how teams can maximize the potential of their QA platforms. So I suppose, Derek, could you start just by giving us a bit of context around that, by maybe explaining what QA teams were doing or perhaps what they were struggling with before companies like Scorebuddy came along, and how that world looks different now?
Sure. Yeah. So look, yeah, starting, I suppose, from a position where a customer may come to us and they're using manual scoring. They're using possibly Excel spreadsheets or Google Sheets or something of that nature to collect the data, right? Uh, the primary focus for them is to uh, deliver consistent uh, service delivery on behalf of the business. And they're doing it by analyzing conversations with advisors and agents. Um, so they want to try and maintain the same level of consistency on a Monday morning at 10 o'clock as they're delivering on a Friday afternoon at 4:30, right? And that's the genesis of QA in most organizations. It's a governance, it's an audit, um, and it's to provide oversight, really. But if you're doing it in a manual process like that, it's very laborious. It stops being effective after 50 agents because you could imagine trying to collect all those spreadsheets, trying to take that data and make it useful in terms of performance reviews or building reports and trends and so on. It's almost impossible. So the first transformational aspect, I suppose, of a product like Scorebuddy is to streamline all of that. Keeps all the data in one place. It's reduces the cost to score, reduces the time to score, puts the information out of the box into the agent's hands typically, and also generates immediate reports in terms of trending for information that's been gathered in what is still a manual process, right? So that's the sort of first step in moving away from uh, generic manual scoring to something that's a bit more business purpose designed and delivering immediate impact, right? So in that scenario, what you will see is agents and advisors engaging with the process, feeling much more trusting in the process, and then evaluators just having more control really over how they collect, where they collect, and how they aggregate that information and report on it. So that's the first scenario. The second scenario would be someone moving from perhaps a plug-in QA module on a CCaaS platform. And those generic modules are generally not capable of taking more than one channel. So they'll work very well with the CCaaS up to a point, but then if you use LivePerson as your chat line or using a Gen AI bot over on a different platform to access customers, you're not going to work. It's not going to work in that environment. So multi-channel, so a specialist QA solution like Scorebuddy is a multi-channel solution typically, right? But what it also opens up for those individuals is that because you're integrated into the conversations, we're actually taking those conversations into our database. We can do something with them before we present them for evaluation. What we can do is we can run a conversation analytics engine across some or all of those conversations. So what that means is that you're curing one of the perennial problems that CX leaders have, which is understanding reasons to drive contact. So there may be seasonal factors. You may get a sudden spike because the company has just launched a new product and it's generating problems, or there may be hidden causes. And what's interesting is when you start talking to customers and saying, well, what's different? They can now see edge cases that they wouldn't have known about before that actually drive a certain type of contact request and they didn't know where it was coming from. So they can now, see these edge cases that, as I say, were invisible previously. So that adds a whole new dimension. You can now correlate reasons to call with outcomes and with quality of service. And that wasn't something that you could do in a manual environment, right? So what have we done in that scenario? We've taken it from a microscope to a telescope. We now could see a hell of a lot more. The other interesting side effect of that was that when we did surveys in terms of agent trust in the QA process, when you had that coverage going from 2% to, let's say, 50%, their trust in the evaluations went up, right? Because they now couldn't accuse evaluators of only looking at a small number of conversations. And you picked the wrong 3. That's why I got a low score. That is becoming less of an issue. So you're curing problems in the operational side as well as in the data intelligence and business intelligence side. So those are 2 scenarios that we would come across typically. The next phase, if you like, which we would see in our customer base. So these are customers who are already using Scorebuddy for an extended period of time. They know it inside out, and they're looking for automation with AI, as you would expect. And what we're finding there is that the combination of AI and the conversation analytics is giving us another step in function and in value. So there's an automation play there, but it's also a coverage play. So now I can say, well, okay, of the 50% of conversations that I'm analyzing from the point of view of reason to call, I want to run an AI scorecard over that 50%, and I want to see what's going on from an advisor performance point of view. So that is now new. It requires a fair bit of planning. It's a transformational exercise. One of our customers who are doing 50,000 AI evaluations per month, they actually they did a calculation, and they would need 34 evaluators to conduct that level of coverage. Now, that was never economically viable, but they have the business impact of 34 evaluators, which they didn't have before. And then using that information, they also compare and contrast in a calibration process what the AI evaluation scored the agent with and what the human evaluator would with the same conversation. So there's a constant auditing and, I suppose, oversight of the AI evaluator by the humans, by the evaluation team. So that's pretty transformational, right? And again, all that extra data is feeding up and aggregating into a business intelligence layer, which can then be shared, right? So it's not just about the operational efficiency and the management of agent performance. It's about coaching insights. It's about, I suppose, general customer journey insights that you can now feed up to the C-suite and engage them in the process, which wouldn't have been the case previously.
Yeah, thanks for that, Derek. That's a really kind of thorough overview, I think, of how the QA space has changed in recent times. And I feel like maybe you did touch on this a little bit, but I was also wondering, when teams start getting those clearer insights from their QA data, what are some of the first actions that they tend to take? And perhaps what are the early wins? What kind of early wins do you usually see?
Yeah, it's a bit like I was saying earlier, you have a lot more visibility, right? So it takes some of the guesswork out of it. I think from the agent's perspective, in terms of managing agents, what you're doing is, so one of the questions we've often been asked is, well, what happens to the evaluators if the AI is doing all the scoring? Well, firstly, the AI doesn't do all the scoring. You're still going to, do deep dives and selective target lists of AI scores to make sure that they're accurate. But if it does typically free up the evaluator time, so your time to score and your cost to score drops through the floor, right? So what do I do with my evaluators? Well, you can now pivot them into data analysis, but also coaching. So I now have a much richer, holistic view of the agent's performance over time, and that can help me craft a very personalized and targeted development plan for that agent. And so what we're seeing is the evaluator's time has been freed up, but they're just pivoting towards these important tasks. And so the sort of repetitive assessment process is much lower in terms of time consumption and resource, and they're now allocating time to performance improvement and analysis.
Yeah. You mentioned kind of helping to improve coaching there, and I think that's one of those sort of key QA improvement areas, along with customers improving CSAT and also helping to improve compliance. I was just wondering which of those impact areas stands out the most to you and why.
It's interesting, right? So it depends on the organization. Okay, so when we engage in conversations about the AI elements in the platform, so there's two aspects to it. There's the conversational analytics is driven by an AI engine. There's the auto scoring capability, again, is using an LLM and using configurable scorecards. And then the third element is what we call augmentation or assistance, right? So that's human tasks and that are assisted by AI. And we'd be used to that in Copilot. Copilot's appearing all over the place, right? In terms of supporting us in PowerPoint or other Microsoft dimensions, right? So it's the same. It's the same logic, right? So for instance, in the context of agent performance, the agent now has an AI button they can hit, and it'll give them a summary of their performance generated by an AI based on the scores that the AI has access to. And it'll say, you're doing really well in these areas. These are not bad either, but here's a few areas that you might want to improve on. Now, it's self-generated in terms of the agent has access to it, but also the supervisors now have access to something similar. So they can start crafting coaching plans for that agent based on an analysis by the AI of a much larger number of conversations and scores. So it's much, like I say, much more targeted for the agent to develop and perform better. And as I say, we're putting that in the hands of the agent as well, so that they can choose to see what coaching tips are being presented to them on a dynamic and ongoing basis. So I think those are the areas that we see maximum impact. In terms of compliance, for some organizations and industries, that's much more important than others. So betting and gaming, charity, finance, insurance, those are all health, those would all be quite heavily regulated. So the proposition there is that because I have this extra coverage, I can do two things. I can identify potential risk. That doesn't mean it's a breach. It means I've identified risk, and I can also then spot breaches. So there's a comfort factor, I suppose. There's an audit factor in terms of the regulators saying, what are you doing to protect vulnerable customers? What are you doing to protect data, etc. Right? So definitely we see in certain organizations that being a priority item, right? So I think those would be the sort of main drivers in terms of change.
Great. And that leads us kind of nicely in to our last question here. So for leaders who are watching today who want to really turn their QA into kind of a true change engine, I guess, what's your best advice for getting started and also for keeping the momentum going?
Okay, so we're definitely in a time of transition. We're on a journey, both with the technology, but also with the purpose and position of QA within organizations. So I talked early on about the idea that it's an operational necessity in order to guarantee consistent service and to provide information and feedback to agents in order to improve their performance. It's so much more than that now, and to be honest, QA doesn't really do it justice. I think we'll have to come up with a new phrase that describes this area. But if you think about it, if I can use the word, what we're seeing now is the word CX intelligence, right? Now that has many guises, but looking at it through a QA lens, the QA team are gathering really valuable data. They now have an automated mechanism for actually increasing the coverage, the visibility, the volume of data that they generate. They also have analytics tools to provide them with instant analysis of what is, in some cases, unstructured data, unstructured conversations, and the AI will structure that data, surface topics, surface correlations, and then you've got a BI layer on top of that. So the purpose of the BI layer is to take the pain out of the analysis, right? So you can custom build dashboards for specific teams within the business or for specific roles within the business. But one of the ones we're seeing increasingly now is that you build a scorecard, or not a scorecard, a dashboard that is tuned to the needs of, let's say, the chief operating officer or the chief financial officer. C-suite that would not typically either know of or be involved in conversations with the QA teams or even the CX leaders. So now there's a mechanism for actually sharing headline KPIs and performance information that's relevant to the C-suite in order to inform their strategic decisions going forward. That is very different, very transformational. And again, that's a business impact that's available, but not always taken advantage of. And again, it's because operational teams, they're very rooted in the day-to-day, ebb and flow of customer needs, and they're trying to satisfy those needs. And now they now have an opportunity to elevate that in a different way within the organization.
Great. I think that's a really nice place to end things today. Thanks, Derek. That's been a really, really insightful conversation that I think our audience are going to get a lot from.
Great, Rhys. Very happy. Yeah, we'll talk again, no doubt.
Yeah, absolutely. I would
Right.
also like to just quickly thank our viewers for tuning in. If you enjoyed this, please do like and subscribe to the channel. And remember, you can head on over to cxtoday.com for more stories like these. Until next time, thank you for watching.
Bye-bye, everybody.